possible. And the reason is what he has talked about, the power, I think it was Kevin, the power dynamics. Once you have the power dynamics, you cannot tell whether it's a willing, all parties willing or not. So it is actually, we change the structure and we don't permit it. If somebody really, wants to be with the other person, then let the senior person step out of the company, let him resign, go and work somewhere else, and then they can carry on. But for as long as they're working in the organization and they're two people of different levels, it is not permitted. So there are structural changes that I think we can make to organizations. The second point I want to make quickly, and this is probably going to be very controversial, but the men are raised by women. So we talk about this tradition, this culture, but these men were all raised by women. So again, I'd like to, just sort of like throw this out there. What are we teaching our sons at home? How are we raising our sons at home? We're women. How are we helping them to learn to be different in a rapidly changing world? In a world where sins committed 20, 30 years ago are being brought back into the open. So I think that women in leadership in organizations have a lot to do to help to change the structure of culture within the organizations. And I think women at home also have a lot to do. It has to be a very deliberate effort. You cannot imagine, you cannot say that, well, I take my son to church or I take my son to the mosque, then therefore, it's all done. No, it's not done. You've got to talk about it. You've got to bring up these issues into the open, and you've got to raise the sons right.
You are right. You again have raised one point, which for me is so distressing. You find that when a rape occurs, it's the woman that is now saying something about what did you wear, or tells the son some sort of rubbish. I don't know, but I can see two people dying to cut in here. So let me ask Oye to say one, two words, and also to Kemi to talk. So Oye, please, what are you?
Thank you so much, Prof. And Tosin, you really made a good point, but just a point of I'm not going to say correction, but it's called co-parenting. What the woman brings on the table, the father brings on the table. Unless you're going to talk about a single parent who's a mom. But we all learn from, my dad was very strict, and I know so many fathers, but we listen to our dads than our mom. So it's when we talk about the division of labor in homes, who we need to emulate, it's from both. So it should be a man and a woman agreeing to raise a child with a gender-sensitive attitude or behavior.
Okay, so let's not blame the women alone. Kemi, is that the same point?
Well, no, I was going to obviously make that point, so thank you, Onya. But I also wanted to add that we also have to remember that, yes, women are socialized in homes of abuse. And so therefore, when women grow into adulthood, they carry the baggage of that childhood. And there are many things that we have to unlearn. And then who's to blame? I mean, we can spend all day discussing the patriarchy, we can spend time discussing cultural practices that encourage the subjugation of women. So when you speak about women bringing up children, we have to remember that you bring up a child with your experiences, and we're a sum total of our experiences. So if we're in an environment that's not enabling, and we're dealing with a young girl that's socialized from birth in a home of abuse, she doesn't know any better. And violence will beget violence. And then the other point I wanted to very quickly make, if I may, is Tosin is absolutely right. If you are in a position of authority and you're a woman, and then you can render assistance, of course.
I will actually come back to that, because I think that, again, we need to talk about that in the law. We have had a female Chief Justice of Nigeria. We have all the time female chief judges in the different states. What are they doing? We've had, I like to think that I was a female Attorney General, and I believe I did make a difference in that area. But we've all got to do that. But we've got to be female. As long as you're gentlemen, you won't think that way. That's the truth of the matter. So, Cheryl, what do you think about all this? And, does it sound strange, or do you have some similarities?
No, it doesn't sound strange at all. I mean, the organizations here that have been tracking violence in the workplace and domestic violence particularly have seen a spike due to COVID and due to the lockdowns and due to the fact that people were not working, they were stuck in homes together. The outlets that people had of going to work or going shopping or just going out were closed off to a lot of people. And so unfortunately, and I'm sure, Kemi, I'm sure you're seeing that too, that there have been spikes due to the COVID lockdowns. So that's one thing we're seeing. The other thing we're seeing is, yes, the laws are crucial, and we do have the anti-discrimination and anti-harassment laws here on the federal level, on the state level, on the local level, but you also need the leaders, right? You need the people who are going to be the role models, who are going to lead the way and show the right way to behave. If you're following the news out of New York, unfortunately, we've had situations where people who were spearheading the laws and in front of the laws were not necessarily following the laws themselves. And so that's a huge problem. So we really need both the laws and the people who are going to be enforcing them and promoting them and working not just as leaders, but also as the allies, right? The people who are there for the women to show the way the workplace should be and influence other people. What's really important is the ability to report, to have somebody within the organization that you can report to know that your report is going to be followed up on, to know that steps are going to be taken to investigate, to follow up, to react, to respond on behalf of the organization. There needs to be more than one person to report to. Unfortunately, I've heard stories where the person to report to was the head of human resources, but it turns out the head of human resources was the person who was actually doing the harassing. So you need more than one person to report to within the organization. And I think it's definitely true that, the more people that come out and report their own situations, that empowers other women to say, me too, right? To say this happened to me as well. One woman comes out and reports, and you've got a dozen who say, well, that happened to me as well, and it's the same situation. So it's so important to be reporting these things, because when the office that takes the report gets one report, that's one thing, and then they get a few others, now they see a pattern, now they know there's a problem, now there's something that really needs to be addressed. Of course, any one situation needs to be addressed, but by reporting, that just shows what's happening. And unfortunately, both in the cases of harassment, and I'm sure you see this as well in cases of violence, there's an escalation, right? Somebody gets away with something, it escalates, the behavior escalates and gets worse over time. And the more that we can be able to step in and stop it as soon as possible, the better.
Yes, that's very true. But then all your organizations have gender policies. Am I right?
It's actually, yes, it's mandatory in New York. Not in every state, but in New York, it is required that everyone has to have an anti-harassment policy. Everyone has to undergo anti-harassment training. There has to be a person or persons designated to report to. The organization is responsible for taking reports, designating someone to be the reporting entity, to investigate and to respond. And so all that's required by law. Okay. But again, the law is only as good as the people who are following it, enforcing it, and leading the way on this.
And when women come out and talk, what is their experience? Are they supported?
In some places, yes, and in some places, no. Like I said, we do find that when women do come out and report, often there's that Me Too, right? There's a situation where other people report similar incidents and similar cases with similar people. You hope that they get the support that they need, but we also hear stories of women who report within their company or within their organization, and it's swept under the rug or it's hidden. And that's not permitted by law. It doesn't mean that doesn't happen. And it really is. I mean, the law in New York actually places extra responsibility on supervisors and managers who are aware or hear reports that they can't just stop there. They are then required to take it further up the chain and make sure that it's investigated and responded to.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I mean, I think this is great because we know we don't have those laws, and I am not aware that we don't sufficiently. I mean, we are talking about the violence against women, which is good to a greater extent. But then again, the professional women are sort of the forgotten lot. again, we actually do need some anti-harassment laws, and we do need to make sure in the legal profession at least that we have policies, gender policies, inclusion policies. But then again, where you have no women in the profession, it's hard to think about it. So there's a bit of artificiality. Please, technical people, can you please spotlight Oyinye? She went out, she's back, but she's not spotlighted here. So please, I guess David is a technical person, or NB admin, if someone can spotlight her back, that that will be good. So we have these issues. So you were telling us, you talked about your policy in your organizations, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You definitely do have that. I mean, like in AFIA.
Yes, definitely. We have this policy in AFIA care. I mean, our principle is very simple. 50% of everyone, living in the world today, they're women.